Mr. Chairman, thank you. Secretary, I appreciate the conversation you and I had last week, and look forward to working with you to see that good things happen in education in our country, and particularly in Kansas. You and I visited, I was voted against No Child Left Behind at its early creation back when I was a member of the House of Representatives for a number of reasons. I have genuine concern about what is happening in regard to teachers. I'm concerned that education becomes more of a bureaucracy as compared to a profession. I worry that the classroom experience is being diminished with focus on in-service teachers' meetings, preparation as compared to that opportunity for teachers to do what they do best, teach our students in a classroom. In my view, students learn with a teacher who loves to teach, with a student who wants to learn, and parents who encourage that through discipline and encouragement. And I want to make sure that the programs we create here in Washington, D.C. don't impede upon that educational opportunity in the classroom. In Kansas, we receive just over 7% of our education funding from the federal government. And yet, as I talk to educators, teachers, school administrators, superintendents, board members, the amount of time, effort, energy, and cost associated with trying to figure out what the Department of Education, what the federal government is doing in education consumes a much more substantive amount of their time than the 7% of funding that's received. And I suppose one could answer, well, let's provide more money. I doubt that that's a realistic option. I'd love to hear from you the efforts that your department is pursuing to make sure that schools have the flexibility, that the focus is on the classroom, that it's not upon paperwork and bureaucracy. And in particular, you indicated that if we don't have ESEA reauthorized by September, that you had plans to offer waivers. And I'm interested in knowing what those what you would require, what those waivers would be, and what you would require of states to actually receive a waiver, and also your thoughts about the growth model, which seems to be educators' kind of solution to AYP, is changing the model, and what efforts in that regard do you see beneficial?
So lots there, and just appreciate your leadership and thoughtfulness on these issues. First of all, one of the biggest things I'm trying to do, and I want you collectively to hold me accountable, is we want our department to be a better partner. And I was a school superintendent for 7.5 years, frankly often chafed at how the restrictions of the federal government. I tell the story frequently that I had to have a huge battle with my Department of Education here for the right to tutor poor children after school in Chicago. I won that battle, but it made no sense that we had to fight the federal government to do the right thing by children. So I'm acutely aware of the history there. Can't say we're doing it perfectly every day, but just assure you, and I encourage you to talk to SOOPs and state school chief officers and teachers to find out if we're being more receptive and doing a better job of listening. We've tried to consolidate programs, cut from 38 to 11. One, to become more efficient and effective, but also just to have less points of contact, make it simpler for folks to deal with us. And then for me, the trade-off in all of this, whether it's in our education plans, race at top, I-3, promised neighborhoods, whether it's in hopefully reauthorization of ESEA, and if not, potentially waivers, is to me the real trade-off is where states and districts are raising the bar, higher standards, holding themselves accountable. I'm a big believer in growth rather than absolute test scores. I want to know how much students are improving each year, not whether it's some artificial cut point. Where states are doing the right thing, we want to provide a lot more resources and a lot more flexibility. Where folks are backing down, reducing standards, showing an unwillingness to close achievement gaps, we're going to challenge them very, very hard. But for me, the grand trade-off philosophically and all these things is if we can hold folks accountable to a high bar, give them a lot more room to move. I think the current law, I've said repeatedly, is far too punitive. It's far too prescriptive. It led to a narrowing of the curriculum, and it led to a dumbing down of standards. None of those things are good for children or teachers or education or our country. And we want to fix the law in a common sense way. Chairman Harkin's working extraordinarily hard in a bipartisan manner, working very, very closely with Senator Enzi. Gentleman to your left, Senator Alexander, someone I have great, great respect for, held my position. I listen very closely when he speaks. And we just hope, despite some of the dysfunction, frankly, that we see coming from Congress, that we think around education putting politics aside, putting ideology to the side, coming up with a common sense bipartisan bill is the right thing to do, and I desperately hope that will still happen.
I thank you for your answer, and I'll follow up with questions in writing. But in that regard, as I indicated to you, I'm very grateful for the waiver you provided McPherson USD School District 418. They've created their own set of tests and standards, and you granted the first waiver nationwide. It's an example of what's going on in Kansas. It's very, very beneficial.
And let me be very clear on that. That was not a gift. That was something McPherson earned. They basically said they were raising the bar above local, above state standards. And whenever anyone is holding themselves to a higher level of accountability and challenging both adults and students to do more, we want to do everything we can to support that and, frankly, to get out of the way. So I appreciate their courage. That's tough, tough work. But if we had more districts and more states doing that, today education would be in a much better place. So that was not a gift. That was something they absolutely earned. And I appreciate the example they're setting for the country.
I do criticize you for using my time to compliment Senator Alexander. If you could do that when he asks his question, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
I'll use his time to compliment you.